Hello, I'm Tony Guida. This is My New York. You may be a Christian, a Muslim, a Hindu, or you may practice no faith at all. But in any case, my guest today believes that the Jewish calendar is a blueprint for life, anyone's life. And she wrote a book about it. My Jewish Year, 18 Holidays, One Wandering Jew. Yes, that is a pun. Yes, the book is witty and illuminating and honest, much like its author, journalist Abby Pogrebin. She devoted 12 months to researching and observing and writing about every holiday on the Jewish calendar. Why? And what did she learn? You'll learn if you stick around. Abby Pogrebin, so nice to see you.
Nice to be here.
What an interesting book, even to a Christian.
Thank you.
Sometime a Christian.
Thank you.
So, your year of living Jewishly, what was the inspiration for that, the catalyst for that?
You know, I was raised in a Jewish home. We lit Shabbat candles when we were all around on a Friday night, and we lit Hanukkah candles, and we had 2 Seders. But I really had missed what I would say is the architecture of Jewish life.
You had no real training.
No real deep education. I was not a bat mitzvah. But also just in my family, we celebrated kind of the top 5 holidays. But there
What are
happened
the
to
top
be
5?
there happened to be a lot more. I mean,
Yeah.
it's almost like a clown car in Judaism. You open the door and the holidays keep coming in a way that's extraordinary and that have endured for thousands of years. And I wanted to understand that both as a journalist and as a Jew, because I had never explored why do these holidays exist, because clearly they were invented, whether you believe in a deity or not, by human beings. And why have they lasted? Because I don't believe that something that has lasted this long could endure unless they were meaningful, unless they were giving something to someone's life. I mean, there's a sense of obligation in Judaism, and there's a lot of guilt. As you know, there's a lot of Jewish guilt.
Yeah.
But I don't think that could be the driver. That's not enough to make 18 holidays endure and resonate as long as they have.
This search that you're describing, did the fact that you were approaching an important birthday with one of those ones with a 0 at the end, did that have anything to do with it? Do you
know, I think you're clearly not just a good journalist, but a good psychiatrist. I think I was reckoning with turning 50, and it was bothering me what I didn't know about my own heritage, about my own inheritance, because I think whether you are observant or not, in whatever religion, at a certain point you decide, am I going to understand this, or am I going to sort of cast it aside? I think as I was turning 50, as my kids were beginning to go off to college, I wanted to say, let me at least take a deep dive one time fully to understand it and also see if it affects me, if it either changes things or doesn't. Before I hit this milestone, that in some ways a reckoning of your life at this moment.
You're right that one reaches out because one believes there's something to grab. So there was a search, a gnawing, but a certain instinct, I guess, intuition.
No, it's a great
that
way
there's
of saying
something more.
that there's something more there.
Well, you said it.
Yeah, that there is this. In some sense, I'm not getting it all. It's kind of like that Harry Met Sally line, I want what she's having. I would look over at observant Jews, and it wasn't that I said, I want to join the Orthodox way of life, which is very demanding and very admirable and very intense. I knew that wasn't going to be me. But I did want to understand for the first time, is there some kind of element that I would learn educationally that would lead me to a different place spiritually, which is very much what happened. I mean, I was living it in real time. I was taking a very deep dive into each holiday before it happened, researching and learning as much as I could as you prepare for anything. And then I was choosing where I was going to go cross-denominationally. I didn't want to just stay in any one particular approach to Judaism. And then I would go home to my laptop, and when it was kosher to write again, because you're not supposed to work in certain Jewish holidays for a certain amount of time, I would digest it. And it was hard to keep up because it is a very demanding calendar, but it was also quite eye-opening what this calendar kind of makes you think about in your life.
Let's talk, before we get into specifics of the calendar, let's talk a little bit more about your background, your home life. Your mom, I think there's one place in the book where you say, or at least suggest her religion was more like feminism, and for members of our audience who don't know, Abby's mom is Letty Pogrebin, one of the founders of Ms. Magazine, and for her, I get the sense from the book that it was, ceremonial in your family. Jewish was, not celebratory. Her Hanukkah
that we were
parties.
marking, yes. My mom was raised actually very observant in a conservative home in Queens. She grew up in Jamaica, Queens. And she was a very unusual bat mitzvah for her time. Girls didn't used to be called to the Torah, only boys. And because her father didn't have a son, he raised her as a son Jewishly. She got a very deep Jewish education. When her mother died of cancer, my mother was 15 years old, she was not allowed to say the prayer for the dead, which is called Kaddish, because it requires a minyan, a quorum of 10 men. They had to be male.
Women don't count?
Women didn't count. And she was so disillusioned by that moment in her faith that she walked away from it for a certain number of years. She came back to it very strongly, but in the meantime discovered feminism. She literally had her consciousness raised when I was early in my life. It happened in the 70s. And so she was marrying her Judaism, which she came back to, which is very traditional, with her feminism, which required in her mind for women to be a bigger part of Jewish ritual. There weren't female rabbis at the time. There was still, a lot of kind of intransience on women's participation in Jewish faith. So my mother's having that journey. In the meantime, because she doesn't raise us with a lot of Jewish education because she'd walked away from it, I was a little bit in between. But I would say that my mother and I have had a very interesting dialogue now that I've come to this in the way I have, which is to come back to it with my own path. And you see that it's just for every religion, as we know. It's very individual. But we have some very interesting conversations because of it.
I'm sure you do. And you describe your father as a bagel Jew.
Yes.
What's a bagel Jew?
A bagel Jew is a Jew who isn't raised with what my mother was raised with. He didn't know Hebrew. He couldn't walk into any Jewish service as my mother could and know the liturgy, know the Psalms, and know the Hebrew. He wasn't raised with it. But he was raised with a bedrock, deep sense of Jewish identity. Part of it was that he's called a red diaper baby. At the time that he was raised, there was a lot of sense of sort of the socialism, the politics of being Jewish. And he was raised in Roosevelt, New Jersey, which a lot of people haven't heard of, which was a WPA project. And there were a lot of Jews in that community. And the artist Ben Shahn was in that community. So, he comes from a very different kind of Jewish identity that's really not steeped in religion, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I love the description, brief though it is, of your mom's Hanukkah parties with music and dance. Gloria Steinem dancing.
No, I was lucky enough to grow up with Gloria. So yes, obviously she was, an enormous figure for the world. But for me, she was someone obviously not obviously, but working with my mom in the office, along with the 5 co-founders of Ms. And she's a closet tap dancer, very talented.
Really?
So at my Hanukkah parties, my mom always required people to come with some contribution. You could bring a poem, a song, a collage. Gloria tap danced, which was amazing. Max Frankel, who I grew up with, who you may know was executive editor of the Times, he brought literally the longest exegesis on the Maccabean revolt from the Hanukkah story.
Put everybody to sleep.
Yeah, put everybody to sleep. I love Max, but it was a little bit expansive. But those Hanukkah parties were extraordinarily memorable.
Do you want to quote or tell us like one of your songs?
Oh my gosh, you're putting me on the spot, Tony. So yes, my twin sister Robin, who you may know writes for the New York Times, and my brother, who's in the restaurant business, we were obsessed with Broadway shows, so we decided to marry or incorporate the Hanukkah story with Broadway show tunes. So yes, one of our lyrics was from Evita, "Don't cry for me, Antiochus. The truth is, I burned the Latkes." And for those who don't know, Antiochus is the cruel king who outlawed Judaism back in 167 BC.
And as long as we're on this, I can't let you get away without quoting your lyrics from your other parody Hanukkah song, which was from West Side Story.
Oh my gosh. You're going to make me do that?
No, if you don't.
I'll do it. When you're a Jew, all the way from your first little bris to your bar mitzvah day. I'm sure we've just lost
good.
viewers.
You know,
I can't sing anymore.
Not
I can hear my voice.
It's
But
the
thank
lyrics.
you. I've never done that,
the
let alone
lyric-
on television.
The lyrics carry it, Abby.
Thank you. It's very supportive.
I should tell you that recently I had Jamie Bernstein.
Oh,
I should-
yes, she's
I sh-
great.
She has written a book about her father. And,
Yes, Lenny Burns.
I'm sure he'd approve. Lenny had a great sense of humor.
He did have a great sense of humor. I'm not sure he'd approve, but
I think well, I'll ask Jamie.
thank you. That's a first, Tony, really.
Yeah,
I've
well, I'm
done
glad.
that in public.
We strive for exclusivity here. So, back to your search. I was interested that you mentioned, I think it was a Pew Foundation study or research of
Yep,
some
report,
sort
yep.
that was looking into either the fact that Christians and Jews weren't getting what they felt they needed from their churches and shuls. Or,
Yes.
Tell me more.
Yeah, the Pew study of 2013, which was on Jewish identity, had a pretty stark result in terms of where the connection comes for Jews. And it was not in Judaism, particularly. It was not in religion. It was not in observance. And then there was a subsequent study that I hope people look up, because I'm not going to quote it exactly accurately, but that was similar for Christianity as well, that there was a drop-off in observance, in church-going, synagogue-going, that these institutions weren't speaking, especially to the younger generation. And, you know, I'm on the Jewish side of things because, as you know, I have been lucky enough to be president of a large synagogue in New York, Central Synagogue, for the last 3 years. You know, we have 2,500 families. It's thriving, I'm happy to say. I don't take any credit for it. I walked into that success. But it defies the odds. It defies the statistics right now. There really are, there's a lot of attrition when it comes to institutional religion. And that was something I was thinking about as I took this journey is, are we walking away from something that actually could be speaking to us? And whether it's ritual or whether it's this roadmap of holiday observance, you know, we sometimes say, let me go get it from my soul cycle class. Let me go to the yoga mat for spirituality. And I'm you know, denigrating any of those choices. I'm on my yoga mat as well. I don't love soul cycle. I can't keep up. But you know, sometimes we assume that we're not getting it anymore from sitting in the pews somewhere, the literal pews.
Well, it's no secret that, I mean, I can speak about Catholic churches that are, you know, empty most of the time, and Catholicism is suffering. I imagine you can speak to the, I mean, you say that Central Synagogue is
An anomaly in many ways.
But I don't know. Are the shuls succeeding or are they failing?
Well, I mean, there are many that are succeeding, and I've been lucky enough to travel the country for this book in the last year, and I feel very optimistic about what I saw everywhere I went. But I also was very deflated by some of what I saw, which is just, you know, people are not prioritizing it anymore, and I think there's a lot of reasons for it. But we know, I don't have to tell you, we live in an age of incredible choices and a kind of cafeteria-style society where you can entertain yourself at the drop of a hat without leaving your house, and you can watch a television show in a sitting and watch a movie without going to a movie theater, and you can do yoga in your living room by, you know, putting on a yoga class on your laptop. All that's to say that Judaism is demanding, and it actually asks you to show up. You can do much of it on your own, but it is a religion, I can speak for it more authoritatively than you can, for Catholicism, that requires you to go and requires you to do certain things at certain times, which is in a way antithetical to the moment we're living in.
I wonder if you see, I'm talking to Abby Pogrebin about her wonderful book, My Jewish Year, when she observed and wrote about 18 of the holidays, and there are more, folks, but she took the top 18. I'm wondering if you think that, you know, in Catholicism, you mentioned the word cafeteria. In the Catholicism, there is this, you know, a lot of cafeteria Catholics in the sense that they pick and choose from not the liturgy, but from the dogma, whatever the right word. You know, I'll observe this, but I'm not going to practice birth. I'm not going to not practice birth control. I'm not going to abstain. I'm not. So you pick and choose and pick and choose, and I wonder if that diminishes. I wonder how that affects one's experience. And do you see that among Jews?
I mean, absolutely, it's individualized, and you know, in Judaism, even within Orthodoxy, which is at the high end of observance in the spectrum, I saw so many gradations of choices. You know, some people are doing all the 6 fasts. There are 6 fasts in the Jewish faith. Some are doing 4. Some are doing 1, Yom Kippur, the one that people know the most. Right. And, you know, I think it is, in a way, a loss if we beat ourselves up for what we're not doing, as opposed to kind of appreciating, not, you know, patting ourselves on the back. We shouldn't get a trophy for what we do, but seeing the glass is half full. Because that's something that I have felt. Like, how am I going to do any of this? It's too late for me. It's too late for me to learn all of these holidays. It's too late for me to learn the liturgy I don't know, the prayers I never learned, the songs I don't know the lyrics to, the Hebrew that I'm very rusty on because I have just the beginner's Hebrew. And I realized that ultimately that keeps you from doing anything. Because in a way, it's paralyzing. You know, ignorance can be paralyzing, and especially when you're someone who has been educated, as many of us are, and don't want to feel dumb in certain spaces. And it's possible to walk into synagogue and feel really at a loss, like you're a fish out of water, even among your own people. So that can be a barrier. I found that for me, learning a little bit more emboldens you to learn more, to keep learning.
Let's dive into your year, which, as I think I understand, it was like August to August of that year.
Exactly.
And why August? Let's start there.
Yeah, I had thought that the Jewish year, before I did this, began on Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish New Year. That's one that most, even non-Jews, understand. That's when then the year begins. It turns out that actually the holiday begins earlier in August. In summer, you are supposed to start the process, of atonement, of introspection, way before Rosh Hashanah, 30 days before. It's the month of Elul. There are Hebrew months of the calendar, and you are supposed to start the deep dive of, self-reflection. Who am I? Who have I been in this last year? And what do I want to change? What do I want to fix? Who do I need to apologize to? That work actually has to begin 30 days before you get to synagogue on the New Year. And that usually is falling in August, although Rosh Hashanah, moves.
Moves.
Yeah. So that was very powerful for me to do for the first time. Instead of just on Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement, 10 days after Rosh Hashanah is Yom Kippur, when you fast for 25 hours and you pound your chest and you acknowledge all the mistakes you made. And sometimes, frankly, I'm sitting in synagogue, very hungry, thinking, all these sins are going by very quickly and it's hard to even think about when I did them all. This month of Elul allows you to slow down atonement in a sense, to break it down and think, when have I made those errors and who have I been? How might you want to improve, Abby? Because there's plenty to make better.
A month is a long time to be reflective.
It's a long time to be reflective. You don't have to do it all day long. I interviewed over 60 rabbis for this book, and many of them gave me a path to observing that. And I also learned that on the Saturday before Rosh Hashanah is something called Slichot, and it's a late night service of penitential prayer, which is very kind of like heartrending. You're basically asking God to forgive you, even before you've gotten to, again, the more famous holiday of Yom Kippur, and that was very powerful to do for the first time.
So you have this month of reflection and all building up to Rosh Hashanah, the new year, and then comes Yom Kippur, which even, I think, especially here in New York, people who aren't Jews understand it as the Day of Atonement, but you found out it's really focused on something else.
Yeah, I learned that it's focused on death in a way that I actually really hadn't understood before. many rabbis describe Yom Kippur as a rehearsal for your death. And it is that because you're not eating, you're essentially going to a death-like state. You're not eating, you're not drinking. You're supposed to wear white, which is the color of the shroud in which you're buried. You're not supposed to wear leather. You're not supposed to anoint yourself with any perfumes or oils or things, even brush your teeth, believe it or not. It's supposed to be a very pure state. And you're supposed to be having a dialogue both with God in terms of what you feel like you should improve, but also apologizing to those whom you have harmed or hurt. And actually, many people forget that you're not just begging or asking for redemption from God, but from the person whom you owe an apology. There is a rabbinic teaching that you have to ask 3 times. So if I have offended you, Tony, I have to come back to you 3 times. You may not forgive me the first time. After I ask you 3 times, I'm off the hook.
I'll forgive you the first time.
Thank you so
if
much.
you ever
That's
offend
very
me
kind
with
of
you.
you.
I doubt that you will.
But the other part of the death imagery or teaching, which I think is powerful, is that it is a kind of nasal clearing realization to realize that you may not get another year. You might not be back here in synagogue on Yom Kippur. God is deciding that on this day. You are getting judged, and whether or not you believe that God is deciding your fate or not, whether you're going to, God forbid, have cancer or get hit by a car, it's bracing to think about, if this was my last year, what would I do with it? How differently would I behave?
How would I live it?
How would I live it? And that's, to me, what really changed Yom Kippur for me.
Well, that resonates with what I said at the beginning, that this is a book, Your Jewish Year, but it has lessons for people of faith and of no faith. I mean, we can all stop and say, hey, wait a minute, I'm not going to live forever. How do I want to live?
Yeah, no, and I think that is an existential question that can either be morbid or it can actually be galvanizing. I think for me, it was the latter. It was a sense of make sure your choices are the right choices. Make sure your time is spent productively and not just advancing myself, but doing for others. Not just in this crunchy giving back way, which I believe in, but sometimes we hear too much that we lose the meaning. But really, are you helping someone else enough? Because I think the meaning in life is not just, again, where did I get to, and not just the family I love, but are you helping the person suffering right next door?
At the end of this period, I think it was the end of this period, you say, I didn't feel changed. There was no revelation. I'm wondering, did you it sounds like you expected some sort of a jolt like we associate with those revival tent thing,
Well, thank you, first of all, for reading so closely. It's true that I did so much preparation for Yom Kippur that I kind of expected the heavens to open and, some music to play and to feel completely like cathartic. Yom Kippur is a heavy lift. And again, I'm not playing the violins for myself, but you aren't eating and you are in synagogue for many, many hours. And the liturgy is a heavy lift. There's a lot of reading, there's a lot of singing, there's a lot of thinking. And it was meaningful. I don't want to say it wasn't meaningful, but I kind of expected, a lightning bolt that didn't quite happen. And I think partly it didn't because no matter how much I learned, I'm not a rabbi, I'm not ordained. And without deflating the people who want to read the book, I hope this is a reason to kind of take a deeper dive than people have. There is a sense that you're missing a lot when you don't know all of what is in this text, all of how one verse relates to another verse. There's just such a landscape of connectivity and connecting the dots that I'm still lacking, that I think I still have more work to do to feel that.
I have to bring up the erotic holiday. How do you pronounce it?
Sukkot.
Sukkot.
Yes.
It's about...
Sukkot. Well, we have to be careful on this broadcast.
No,
not to offend. This is PG-13. So
I
Sukkot...
think it's... I don't know.
It can be a little racy.
M.A. Well, it's about, and I think I can use the word that Abby uses in the book, Sukkot, which is what time of the year, by the way?
It's right after Yom Kippur. It's the holiday that follows immediately.
So you're dying on Yom Kippur, but you're living again and living
right.
to shtup. That's what Sukkot is about.
Well, that's just
Stupping.
one aspect
Oh,
of it.
tell us more.
Yes, one rabbi said Sukkot is about stupping, and I said, wait a second.
Sex.
Sex, right? It's Yiddish for sex. There's tremendous fertility imagery in Sukkot. Sukkot, basically, in one sentence, if I can make it one sentence, it's marking the time period when Jews escaped Egypt. The Israelites, they weren't Jews yet, escaped Egypt from the cruel Pharaoh, and where they were enslaved. And they are running in the desert. They've crossed the Red Sea, and there's no time either to bake your bread, so we had matzah, or to build homes. So they built Sukkot. They're called huts, very temporary structures, and we lived in them and moved on, and built them and moved on. So this is marking that journey, and it's also marking the harvest, which is the annual the time for that. And you shake a lulav and an etrog, which I won't explain here, but it looks like a stalk, like a heavy stalk of a greenery, and almost like a lemon. It's a citron. It's like a
phallic image.
Exactly, like a breast and a phallic image.
Right.
And you thrust them in different directions. So rabbi after rabbi explained this is fertility imagery, is unmistakably in the text. I kept saying, wait a second, am I going to get in trouble here in this book? So hopefully it's a reason for people to buy it on Amazon, to find out the X-rated holiday of Sukkot.
The X-rated, you didn't know there was an X-rated holiday in Judaism.
Yeah.
Were you at all concerned that you might be seen as a dilettante by, I'm going to do a year and then I'm going to back out again?
It's a great question. I was very worried about that, and particularly with the Orthodox people I was interviewing, the rabbis, the scholars. I didn't want them to think I was parachuting in and out or that I was doing it as a gimmick, because I genuinely had a thirst to understand this. And I have to actually, tip my hat to all of them. No one at least said it to me. They were actually eager to teach me. And sometimes they were very pushy and nudgy and saying, you've forgotten this and you have to read that and make sure you go here and make sure you go there. But there was such a generosity of education that I experienced. Like, it was an instant kind of crowdsourcing of learning and a laboratory, really, that was precious. And I wish more people could experience it. Where I did feel like for myself, I was tough on myself, was to say, I'm not just going to do this for a year. I have to now make decisions about how my own observance is going to change. And I think that's a very private decision. I didn't just move on or just go back.
Well, that comes to the point of, which you deal with at the end of the book, and you say, was I changed? And you say yes and no.
Yeah, yes and no. And in many instances, yes and no. And I know we don't have time for all of them, but yes, I will never look at life the same way. I will never look at what these holidays demand or ask of us the same way, what they raise in my head very much in terms of, again, universal questions, like you said, that aren't just Jewish. But no, in the sense that I'm not going to suddenly be an Orthodox Jew, and I'm not going to keep kosher or pray 3 times a day. And I think there's humility in that, and there is, in a way, some misgiving in that, too. I'm in between. I'm very much an in between. I'm still on this path. And I think journey is an overused word, but I think everyone, in a way, has to make these decisions, not just every year, but every day.
Well, it's here in the book, My Jewish Year. Abby Pogrebin.
Thank you.
Delight to talk to you.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you for coming.
I've been a fan a long time, so thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.